I kissed Parker and I said, "Hey, kiddo, you're going to be good." And he's like, "Yeah, Dad." And as they're wheeling him into surgery, he gave me that infectious smile that he had and the thumbs up. And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, okay, he's going to be okay."
You might need Kleenex for this show. Here's the reality. No parent ever wants to outlive their child. And if life is cruel enough to make it so, then every parent's only wish is to be there, to hold a hand, to whisper love, offer comfort in those final moments. On September 19th, 2020, as COVID roared through our society, Pierre and his wife Patricia were in Cornwall, and Pierre's son Parker, 20 years old, called home, crying in pain. This was a kid who had a high tolerance for pain. So when he called, Pierre knew something was seriously wrong.
You know your children, by the sound of the voice that something is wrong.
Parker's stepbrother Stephen drove him to the hospital, but because of strict COVID restrictions, when Pierre arrived, he wasn't allowed in. Not for 1 minute of the 12 hours, while Parker waited alone, scared and in agony.
I begged for them to let me in.
When doctors finally got to him, and when they rushed him into surgery, they discovered that this was serious. And Pierre fought his way into that hospital to be with his son Parker. And over the next 9 weeks, Parker fought like a hero. In and out of ICU, 9 surgeries. Moments when miracles looked like they were going to shine on him, and then moments when it looked like he wouldn't make it.
And I'm thinking to myself, that can't be good. We're going on 3 or 4 hours. And then all of a sudden I saw the doctor walking towards me with another doctor.
And on December 12th, after weeks of these surgeries, machines, miracles, and medications, doctors told Pierre there was nothing more they could do. They turned to him and asked for his consent to let Parker go.
He was surrounded by family and, we were moving him the wires and everything. And he looks at me and he's like, "Dad, look, I'm better. I'm coming home."
And he signed that form, watched the monitors fade, and in that moment he whispered to himself, "I just killed my son." But this show is also about what comes afterwards. The grief, depression, the thoughts of joining Parker, and the family and business that depend on you.
My daughter's face, and then Patricia, and my employees, and everybody that were counting on me. And I just broke down in my car and cried.
And then the quiet whispers of a renewed spiritual connection that Pierre has with God and with Parker. I know the show will move you as it's moved me, but at the end of the interview, I felt my spirits lift and my faith in the human spirit rise.
Maybe they hear this or they read the book and they see that although the pain is great, something great can come of it. And I know that Parker's looking down and he's happy and he's proud.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast, and ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated.
Pierre Mousseau, welcome to Chatter That Matters.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Pierre, I first heard about your story on LinkedIn. I know that other people that read your posts were the ones that encouraged you to write a book. And we're going to talk about all that led to writing that book. But before we talk about September 19th, 2020, share with us a little bit about what life was like for the Mousseau family. Probably one of the happiest times of your life.
When Parker was born, my oldest sister held him. And her first words were, "Oh my God, you can just feel the love oozing out of this child." When Parker was born, he was born with, very, very briefly, he was born with Hirschsprung's disease, which is a disease of the colon, which they fixed. But he had a surgery at 8 weeks old, but he was okay for growing up. But Parker never complained. And Parker, when he was bullied in school, would come home and tell me about his day that he was bullied, but then would make a comment and say, "Well, you don't know what he's going through at home, the other child that bullied." And that's just the way he was. He just never said an unkind word. When he was roughly around 6, we started racing together because I know I don't look like it now and people can't see it because it's not on video, but I was in good shape and I used to run every weekend, and Parker started running races with me at a young age of 6. And, we had a special bond. There's no doubt about it. And we had a happy life. I mean, his mother and I divorced when he was 9. But even through the divorce, I mean, I had a very close relationship with Parker and his sister. So it was good times.
One of my favorite pictures that has been attached to a guest is Parker leaning over your shoulder and the smile on both of your faces. Whatever love he had at 6 minutes old, he still had then. So what a beautiful human being.
Thank you.
To set the context, take us back to that September 19th, 2020.
Parker lived with me at the time, and my wife and I, Patricia, which is Parker's stepmother, we went to Cornwall to visit my daughter. My daughter lived with her mother. That night, Patricia and I were getting ready for bed. It was just after 11 p.m., and my phone rang, and it was Parker, and which was very odd because Parker never called. It was very odd. So when I answered the phone, he was crying, and he was in a lot of pain. And that's, you need to understand, is that's not Parker. Parker had a very high pain tolerance, and Parker never complained. Never. I knew instantly something was wrong. So Patricia's son, Stephen, his stepbrother, was at home, and I asked Stephen to drive him to the hospital right away because I knew something was wrong. And I knew it wasn't anything, like appendicitis, or if it was anything else stomach related. I knew something was seriously wrong. We rushed home. It's about a 4.5 hour drive. Patricia drove. She made it in, I think, in under 3 hours. And but we couldn't. The hospital wouldn't let me in to see him. He was in emergency, and they wouldn't let me in to see him because it was COVID. I begged for them to let me in. I mean, Parker was 20 years old, but you need to understand, Tony, and for the audience listening, is that Parker was a very young 20. It killed me that I couldn't be there. So I came home and spoke with him on the phone. He waited well over 12 hours before he got seen. And it was brutal.
It must have been so hard not to be able to advocate on his behalf, not be able to hold his hand, not be able to, because you guys looked inseparable. So, he took 12 hours to be seen. When did you realize that this was something that was very serious?
Well, during those 12 hours, I mean, we spoke dozens of times. And, often it was him crying, begging me to come and see him, and trying to explain to him that I'm trying. I just knew, it's hard to explain to all you know your children, by the sound of the voice that something is wrong. And then finally, when he called and said that the surgeon saw him and that he had to go for surgery, I was shocked, to be honest. I knew it was serious, but I didn't think it was surgery serious. And he put the doctor on the phone. And I said to the doctor, I said, there's no way you're bringing my son in for surgery without me seeing him. I'm leaving the house. I'm heading to the hospital. And you better get me in to see him, because otherwise, and I said this to him, you'll have to call security and the police to stop me because I'm going in. He put me on hold. The surgeon came back literally a minute later and said, okay, Mr. Mousseau, come in and we'll let you in to see him. He's like, Mr. Mousseau, it's routine surgery. We know he only has a small bowel. Everything is fine. It's a small twist and it'll be fine. And your son will be fine. I kissed Parker and I said, hey, kiddo, you're going to be good. And he's like, yeah, Dad. And as they're wheeling him into surgery, he gave me that infectious smile that he had and the thumbs up. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, okay, he's going to be okay.
Take me through the next 9 weeks, because this wasn't a simple surgery. This wasn't a skip in the park. This was a combination of chaos and occasional silver linings of hope.
They escorted me to a waiting room, which was completely empty because, again, it was COVID, so there was nobody there. Number of hours went by, and I was surprised. I was on a phone with my VP of Ops and checking in on the business, and I realized he asked how Parker was, and I realized that it had been a couple of hours that had passed. And I said, well, that's weird. And I'm thinking to myself, that can't be good. We're going on 3 or 4 hours. And then all of a sudden I saw the doctor walking towards me with another doctor. His surgeon sat in front of me. The doctor sat beside me on my right, and they were looking down, and I'm like, guys, what's going on? The surgeon looked at me and said, Mr. Mousseau, it's worse than we thought. And he said, when we went in, the whole bowel was twisted. It wasn't a small twist. It was the whole bowel. And because, and the doctor's words, because he waited so long, the bowel is black and it's dead. And he put his head down and I just asked the doctor the question, are you telling me my son is dead? And he looked up and he said, no, I'm telling you that he's not dead. He's going to go up to ICU, but I am going to tell you that he will not survive. I went to stand up and I'm a big guy. I'm 6'1", I'm 250 and I fell down. They picked me back up, brought me to a waiting room, and then he went up to ICU. They had explained to me that because he was an adult, that they were going to have to explain to him that he was going into surgery the next morning and that chances are that he was not going to survive. And I begged the doctor not to tell him that. I mean, he's just a child. But he said legally they had to. And so the next morning came and I cut the doctor off and I told Parker and I said, listen to Dad, Parker. And he was looking at me with those big eyes. And the doctor's going to say that there's a high probability that you're not going to make it. And I said, but I want you to know something, that you will make it. And you know why you're going to make it? Because you're tough. You're strong. And God is looking over you. And what the doctor doesn't know right now is that God is going to enlighten him while he's operating on you. And you're going to be okay. And you're going to come out of this. And you need to be strong. And he gave me a thumbs up. And off they took him to surgery. And we were in the waiting room, my entire family. And they came out a few hours later. And the doctor had a smile on his face and said, I don't believe it. His bowel turned pink. And he said that he was going to survive, that he was going to live. And we were, my gosh, we were all excited. We were jumping up for joy. And, he went up to ICU. He was back. And the next day he was moved to the 8th floor, the surgical floor. And then he was supposed to come home on Monday. And then on Sunday, I got the phone call to get to the hospital immediately, that he was back to ICU and that his bowel was turning black. By then, a week had already passed. So by then, 8 more weeks of between getting better to back down to the surgical floor, back up, back down, back up. There was one nurse, Tony, the head nurse, that when she worked, she allowed me to see Parker. But when she wasn't working, I wasn't allowed to go in and be with him due to COVID restrictions. So it was difficult because there were many days that I couldn't see him. The last few weeks he was in ICU. And then the day came where I met with the doctors and I flat out asked them and said, are the machines keeping him alive? He was on 3 different machines. I was on dialysis and he was on 2 chemical machines. And I said, is there any hope? And there were 2 doctors and a head of ICU in the room. And I said, just tell me the way it is. No BS. Just say it. And they're like, Mr. Mousseau, you know what? He's suffering and there's no chance. There's no more surgeries we can do. Yet he had, I believe it was 9 surgeries, I believe. So I made the decision it was hard. I made a decision to remove him off those machines and he died the next morning.
In the book you wrote, I killed my son.
Yeah.
Just ripped into my heart as a father. How do you feel today? Do you realize that what you did was the right thing to do? It took away his pain. You're a man of faith that put him with his maker. Do you feel that way now after all this time has passed, or did you still feel that decision was the decision that did it?
Today, it was absolutely the right decision. At the time, it's how I felt when I wrote. The book is written from the heart. It's just, there's no script, there's no nothing. It's just all from the heart. I just typed.
Yeah.
That's how I felt, Tony. I felt like I killed my son.
Those 9 weeks, the miracles, the angel that let you into ICU. I mean, you use a lot of religious metaphors in your book. How did you reconcile your relationship with God over those 9 weeks? Because it certainly, if you're looking from the outside in, he wasn't on your side here. He wanted Parker.
And it's not like I was a super religious person during that time. I had not been to church since I got married back in 95. So, like most Christians, you believe and you have somewhat faith. And I prayed. And when he died, believe me, I hated God, and I made no bones about it. I was very vocal. But to your question, during the 9 weeks, I was strong for Parker, obviously, when I was with Parker. He never saw me emotional. He never saw me. I was always pumped and always happy and tried to motivate him. But at home and alone or with my wife, I would make comments like, why is God doing this? Like, why? What's the message here? What's the test? What is going on here? And the answers didn't come. It was like a big question mark.
And those 9 weeks that Parker's fighting for his life, was there ever a moment where you realized he knew inside that this was going to be the end of his life?
No, he didn't know.
As a kid that was bullied and a kid that was, as you said, a young 20-year-old, do you feel at least within those 9 weeks he felt a sense of accomplishment, that he was a hero that could survive 9 surgeries and felt that he was making you proud, his mom proud, and himself proud?
Yeah, Tony, without a doubt. When I made a decision to take him off the life-supporting machines, when he was surrounded by family and, we were moving him the wires and everything, and he looks at me and he's like, Dad, look, I'm better. I'm coming home, right? They're removing the machines. I'm like, he goes, I did it, Dad. I did it. And I go, yeah, you did it, Parker. You did it, and he's like, and he looked at me with that grin and that smile. And you know what he said to me? He said, Dad, I've been through a lot the last few weeks. I think you should buy me a truck. Inside, I was broken, right? And I looked at him. I'm like, you got it, Parker. When you come home, I'm going to take you shopping and we're going to buy you a truck. And during that time, he picked up and he had some good moments, and he was taking selfies with his sister, and his sister was, she knew, and she was broken. But we had that special moment with him. You know what I mean? It was a special moment for sure.
What came out of nowhere in the book is this concept of Spider-Man saved me. Just tell us a little bit about how a Marvel character in the middle of angels and God and the 9 weeks of a roller coaster you're on, how he appears.
When you're in pain and severe pain, emotional pain, memories come back. And I didn't have the best childhood. And, I can write 2 books on my childhood, believe me. When I was a child, Spider-Man was my protector, was my out, the comics and everything. And what Peter Parker, who is Spider-Man, for those who don't know, Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and Peter had, his uncle died and he was thinking of getting revenge, and he didn't get revenge, and he had all this pain, and he was a normal kid, but now with all these great powers, and he decided to make a difference in the world. It resonated. When Parker was born, my name is Pierre, right? So in English, Pierre translates to Peter. And we named Parker Parker. So together we're Peter Parker. So together, Parker and I are Spider-Man. I put that in the book because it goes to show, although you're in great pain and you're suffering and you're at that fork in the road, and you can choose left and be negative and hate the world and, become a mean person or become a hermit or whatever it may be, or you can choose the path to the right and choose to be positive and trying to make a difference in the world. Look, Tony, I don't know why God took my son. I don't know why. I don't have the answers. I will find out one day, and there's no doubt in my mind that I'll be reunited with Parker one day, but I've chosen the path to the right, and I've always been a very positive person. And now my mission in life is to get the message out and try to make a difference in for people.
I think it's important also to talk about the moments afterwards. You describe a silence that filled every corner of your life. Every beep of your alarm meant something.
Look, it made me realize how really, truly Parker was to me, how important he was, and my life was empty. It seemed empty.
But how did that impact your relationship, for example, with the mother of Parker, your new wife, your daughter, people all around you? Because you must have been having to play act a lot. Because what I read in that book was you became a ghost. And yet people still needed you. I mean, you're the cheerleader in that family. I can tell you right now, I could just listening to you and how you were with Parker, that they needed your strength and your energy. So how did you manifest that, knowing that inside there was this quiet and the silence?
So for my daughter, I was always very supportive and just buried it and, be positive with her. As far as my ex-wife goes, we had been divorced for 15 years. So, but what it did do, I'll mention this, what it did do is it did bring my ex-wife and I closer. I will say that. Now, from a business perspective, as you know, I run my own company and I'm CEO of my company. And that was tough. That was tough putting on a brave face for my employees. We also lost our largest client 4 months after Parker died. So we were going through a very tough time business-wise. It's a small business, not a big business. But I had to put Parker's grief aside to show up at work every day with a smile on my face, get us out of trouble and make us successful and keep the employees happy, because that's why I started the company, was to provide a good place to work for people. Now, on the home front, you mentioned my wife, Patricia. She saw me broken. I wasn't the uplifting person, positive person with Patricia. Patricia was my rock. I don't know what I would have done without her. And to be honest, there were days where I thought for sure I would come home and see my bags packed or her be gone, because it was tough time. And not that we argued and not that I was mean. I was probably mean, like emotionally mean. I went through a severe depression. Yeah, a severe depression.
You talk about this, you chose the path on the right, but before you got to that crossroads, one night you're driving in a Mustang, you're thinking about ending your life. So there's no crossroad in front, and you saw Parker's face.
I left that day. I kissed my wife and I hugged her, and I told her I was going for a drive. And I was leaving the house that day to not return, Tony. As I was walking out, she said to me, I'll see you soon. And under my breath, my reply was, no, you won't. And I took off in my Mustang, and I was on a country road in Caledon, near where I live. And I saw the perfect tree. Big maple tree, perfect tree. I revved up, I sped up, and I was going like a $150, $160, and then all of a sudden, Parker's face just plain as day, right in front of me. And then my daughter's face, and then Patricia and my employees and everybody that were counting on me. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was slowing down. I don't know. I'm a French guy.
Deaccelerating. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the time I was at a stop, basically, and I just broke down in my car and cried, and I turned around and came home.
Beautiful story. And I see it as a storyteller. I see Parker in heaven telling you, we're not ready for you yet. And everybody that depends on you saying, we're not ready for you to go.
Not ready yet. Nope.
I love the part in the book when you talk about grief, saying it initially was my armor. It carried me through the day, but then you realize that armor was no longer protecting you. It was actually keeping you from healing.
Yeah, it was weighing me down, and grief weighs you down. I mean, look, I thought I was healing, but I wasn't, right? I was protected in that armor, and I was protecting myself, but I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't improving my life, and I wasn't doing anything because I thought that if I would be happy, if I did things that made me happy, I didn't deserve to be happy because Parker died. And I felt that I was letting him down if I was happy, if you could even fathom that. I know it makes no sense, but that's how I felt.
When we come back, Pierre and I talk about how he found faith on an unexpected Sunday when he went to church for the first time. And the deacon talked about dealing with grief, especially when that grief involves losing a child, and how that moment became his light for moving forward.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman, host of Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. Ideas matter. Ideas are the oxygen of human endeavor. They breathe life into how we work, live, and play. Ideas let us create and innovate and overcome complex and often challenging circumstances. Big or small, revolutionary or evolutionary, almost every positive step forward begins with a good idea. So bring your ideas to RBC because they matter, and they'll bring theirs because you matter. Ideas happen at RBC.
I started writing LinkedIn articles to not only help myself, but to get the message out and maybe help others that are suffering. Maybe not through the loss of a child, but even a spouse or a sibling and a parent or something. I found that as I kept writing, I was feeling better. And then somebody messaged me on LinkedIn and said, "These articles are amazing. Are you writing a book?" And I said, well, I started, but I wasn't really sure. I'm not an author, so I wasn't sure. So yeah, so then the book came to life.
My guest today is Pierre Mousseau, who signed papers to turn off the machines, and he was there watching his son Parker pass away. And the show is about coming to terms with grief and realizing that from this horror, there can be a path in life worth walking. And the other thing that I was interested about is this non-relationship with God, then the hate with God, and then falling in love with this sort of spiritual being. And I'm not talking about religion and candles and churches. I'm just talking about this spiritual energy that connects all of us, and you let that energy back in your life. How did that come about?
It was actually a year ago this month, so 4 years since Parker's passing. It was a Sunday morning, and I'm at my kitchen island across from my wife, and we're having coffee. And out of the blue, I just got this overwhelming feeling to go to church, which was very odd because I had not spoken to Patricia about going back to church. We had not spoken about God or anything like that. I looked up at Patricia and I said, I'm going to go to church. She was surprised, and I went to 12 o'clock mass, and I'm sitting in the back pew on the far left. I wasn't paying attention, and all of a sudden, this deacon gave a homily, and his voice was magnificent, and it caught my attention. And it just happened to be that the homily that day, he spoke about grief and the loss of loved ones. I was blown away, and then halfway through his homily, he touched on the greatest pain of all, of losing a child, and I broke down in my pew. The following week, I went back to mass, and I introduced myself to this deacon. He offered to speak with me. I made an appointment. We spoke. I've been going to church ever since, but I've had signs, and then working on my faith at that time. And about 6 months later, Tony had a really bad day. It was a really bad grieving day, missing Parker. I was in the shower in the morning, and I was broken, Tony. I was like really just like completely beside myself. And all of a sudden, I had my eyes closed, and all of a sudden, waves of bright purple I could see, magical purple. Now, me being me, I'm like, what's going on? I opened my eyes, didn't see the purple, closed my eyes, and then it continued. And then all of a sudden, I felt from behind, arms holding me. And the love that I felt was unimaginable, undescribable. And I don't want to sound preachy or anything like that. I'm just sharing the story, is that I just knew at that time that Jesus was holding me without a doubt. And I knew that my son was okay. You know, I told Patricia what happened, and I journaled it right away. And I said, oh my gosh, if heaven is even a piece of that feeling of love that I felt, then I can't wait to go. Now I give my grief to God. And it's not that God heals me. It's just a place now for my grief to go. And it helps.
As we get near the end of the book, you talk about, there's a chapter called When Love Felt Like Water.
Yeah.
And you talk about how much grief, this approach you're taking to it, God, everything around you has reshaped your marriage, your love for Patricia and the people around you. So share the gift that Parker gave you. As much as you never would have asked for it or wanted it, it was a gift that was given to you.
It's definitely a gift. I say in the book, I'll always be broken, Tony, and I always will be. I always will be broken. I lost my child, but I choose to make a difference with that brokenness. And brokenness doesn't mean that I'm not happy. I believe with this loss now, much like, Spider-Man's tagline is, with great power comes great responsibility. Well, now with this great loss, my responsibility now is to make a difference in the world and help people, especially men, because men have a hard time opening up. Men have a hard time speaking. Men have a hard time showing emotion. So I'm out there. It's raw. It's open. And I'm hoping that if men that are suffering, whether it's a spouse or a child, heaven forbid, or a parent, maybe they hear this or they read the book and they see that although the pain is great, something great can come of it. And I know that Parker's looking down and he's happy and he's proud.
And how has this impacted your business and your leadership style and your relationship with others outside of that cocoon of that family?
The biggest impact now is I don't take anything for granted. I cherish everything because it could be gone the next day. I've always been a caring and loving husband, but now I don't leave the house in the morning without hugging and kissing my wife goodbye and telling her I love her. And there has been a couple of times that I have left in a hurry for work where I've actually turned around, Tony, and come back, because that's the important things in life, is to be present, to be grateful for the things in life. Even this moment with you, Tony, I mean, meeting you, being here with you, speaking with you, I cherish this. I'm filled with gratitude for this. When I go to work, I've always appreciated my employees, my people, but I have a much more appreciation, more in tune. I think the right word is I am much more present. You come home, you're a CEO or you're a manager or you're even an hourly employee, you work hard all day, you come home and you're busy at home with something else and not with your kids or not with your spouse. That's all changed for me now. I'm 1,000,000% present.
You end your book with 4 words that stopped me in my tracks and made me go for a walk and think. And that was, he was always there. Final line. But I have a question for you. Who is the he? Is it Parker? Is it God? Or is it both?
It's both, but it's mainly God. And what I mean by that is when I looked back in my life, losing Parker, you do a lot of soul searching, a lot of thinking, and you look back and, I was hit by a car when I was 9 years old and cracked my skull open. I was in the hospital for a couple of months. And I say in my book, I should have died and I didn't. And God was there. And my upbringing, which I won't get into, but God was always there. And it took losing Parker to realize that he was always there. He was silent, like he's not thunderous, right? But he was always there. And then as it relates to Parker, since Parker's been gone, he's been there. He continues to be there.
Before I get into my takeaways, I'll go back to those words. I killed my child, and how I put myself in your footsteps because I'm a father of 2 daughters. And I have to imagine that was, without question, the most horrible decision you ever had to make. But we all know it was the right decision. What I took away after you went beyond the Mustang and the maple tree when you tried to end your life is these insights. Grief was an armor that protected me for a long time, but then I realized it was shielding me from healing. And I think that's a powerful lesson for anybody going through grief, that there's a time in your life, not that you have to let grief go, but you have to channel it in a different way. You found a way to channel it with God. Other people might channel it through therapy, but you have to let it go to heal. The second thing is the purple light and the arms that wrapped around you. You felt it was Jesus. I see it as Parker as well, hugging you like you were in that hospital, telling him it was okay. And I think it's being open to that, being accepting. As you said, males especially want to discount that and discredit because it's not very masculine to feel that way. And I celebrate and champion the fact that you talk openly about it. And I know that those arms wrapped around you, and I know you saw those purple lights. And then the fact that you don't take anything for granted was interesting, but where you really made an impression on me is just saying, even being with you, Tony, I don't take for granted. I appreciate it. And I'll tell you something. I appreciate you, honestly, for being with me today. I think you're going to offer so much to so many people that are dealing with circumstances they never asked for, they would never sign up for, but they have to deal with it. And for all of that and more, Pierre, I'm deeply honored to share your story in such an honest and authentic way with the listeners of Chatter That Matters.
It means a lot. Thank you.
Once again, a special thanks to RBC for supporting Chatter That Matters. It's Tony Chapman. Thanks for listening, and let's chat soon.